Hi guys, in this video I cover methods. In particular, I go into parameters and arguments. Let's quickly review a method declaration. So a method declaration has a return type, a method name, followed by open close parentheses, and optionally we can define one or multiple parameters. When we don't have parameters, we cannot pass any values to the method. So when we declare one or multiple parameters, we can pass one or multiple values to that method. And after that here, we have a code block. Inside the code block is the method body. This is where we write statements that are executed whenever we call this method. Now let's take a look at an example. Let's say I have a method that is named showHello. And here I simply output a greeting, hi. Here's the return type, that's the method name. And here I don't have any parameters defined at this point, so there's nothing I can pass to that method. Now let me call this in the main. So this one called showHello, I get an error because I'm calling it from a static method. So whenever I'm in a static method and I don't have any object, I can only call other static methods. So I simply write static before and this will go away. Now this one just outputs hi. Let's say I want to greet a user. Now I could define a variable here. Let's say a name, and let's say I take the name John, and then I just add this here, name John. Now I run this one more time. So I get now a personalized greetings, but this is really just personalized to a single name, right? Whenever I want to call this, and assume for a moment you have a bigger program. You have the main, you might have some other functions, and you have multiple places where you want to call this method and output a greeting. At this point, whenever you call it, it will only greet a single name. And there's no point in changing this variable. We cannot really change it, right? When the program is running, we cannot really compile it. So the proper way is to, instead of writing this as a local variable, to write this as a parameter. So I take the string name here and I define it inside the two parentheses. Now it is an input to that method. And here I get a compile error because now when I try to call this method, the compiler complains. I can only call it if I pass in a string value. What I could do here is now define John inside the parentheses. Now John is an argument. So this one is called an argument. Argument is a value that we pass to a method. And here string name is a parameter. So we have a single parameter. It's a string type named name, and here we pass this argument to it. So essentially what happens is John will be assigned to this parameter, and now the value has John. It's similar what I had before as a single statement where I declare the variable and initialize it to John, but now we can call it wherever we need to with a different name. So let's run this. You can see I still get John, so it's just like before. But let's say I have some code here, and later I want to call this again, showHello, and now I want to call it with a different name. I want to greet a different user. Now I run this, and here you can see one time I get John, one time I get Mary. So wherever I call this method, I can specify what the unique input is that this method should show. Now in both method calls here, I passed in a hard-coded value. I can also pass in variables. To demonstrate this, let's say I create string, first name, and the first name here is Kevin. And now this is some program in my variable, some variable in my program, and now I want to pass the value that is stored in this variable to the method. So I call show hello, and I pass in first name. Now this works too. This will simply read the value, which is Kevin, pass it to the method and assign it to name. And then name will be Kevin, and it will output hi Kevin. So here we can see it. Now this name does not have to match this name. It's completely separate. I could have a name variable here, and it is different than the variable here. Remember, variables have a scope, and the scope is always in the block where they are defined. Now in this case here, it's defined as a parameter. So this name variable only exists inside this method. If I have a name variable up here and I declare it, it's completely separate. So even if they are named the same, they are separate variables. If they are not named the same, that's completely fine. We really just take the value and pass the value over. Now let's do one more example. Let's say I have a method void that is called show add, and it has two variables, int a and int b. And these variables here are parameters, right? So since I don't declare them as local variables inside the method, I expect an input for both of these. And here I output the equation for it. I output a, then I concatenate the plus sign, then I concatenate the value of b with the equal sign, and here I put in parentheses a plus b. If I wouldn't put parentheses here, I would simply concatenate a to the string and then b to the string. So by putting the parentheses around it, it knows it has to do the arithmetic operation, add these two, and then use the concatenate operator for the string to concatenate the result. So how can I call this method? Now I can pass again literals, show add, for example, 3 and 5. And I run this. And this will now take 3, assign it to A, 5, assign it to B, and then execute the statements. Single statement, so it outputs 3 plus 5 equal 3 plus 5 is 8, and then 8 at the end. So we get this equation. Now we could also call it with variables. A, 5, B, 4, show add, and I pass in A and B. And when I run this, now it assigns these two values. A was 5 and B was 4. Now I mentioned earlier that they don't have to match, so I could also do it in another order. It really just takes the values, right? It looks up what is B, it's 4, what is A is 5. So I assign the first value here, which is 4, to A, and the second value, which is 5, to B. So when I run this, it would just be a different order. So here we'll get 4 plus 5 instead of 5 plus 4. So the arguments, the variables that I use as arguments, they don't have to match the parameters. And I can also mix up literals and variables. So I could do A and 7, for example. As long as I pass in an integer, it doesn't matter. Does the integer come from a variable or is it a literal? As long as the number matches and the type matches. So here's the last call. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video and you know how to define arguments and how to define parameters and how to pass arguments to the method. One last thing, there's really no limit to the number of arguments and to the number of parameters that we define. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.